Jalen, what do you think about the Clippers' final possession yesterday?
I think that's great hustle by Rudy Gobert. Not only do you rarely see three-point shots get blocked, but in particular at the end of a basketball game in the playoffs. Great job by the Defensive Player of the Year, the Stifle Tower. Let's start the show.
Hit it. He is Jalen Rose. I'm David Jacoby. We are
What's
Jalen
up?
Jacoby. What is it that we do?
We give the people what they want.
We have so much to discuss in the NBA playoffs, and we have a fact about the Bucks that make them unlike any other defending Super Bowl champion. But we start the show with the Jazz against the Clippers. It was game one, and it was a tight game until Donovan Mitchell addressed his team, and here's what he had to say to the Jazz.
They played Game 7 2 days ago. It's all how we start this quarter. They'll call it quits and get ready for Game 2 if we make them. Let's get ready for that.
Jalen, from that point on, the Jazz jumped out, and that man, Donovan Mitchell, scored 45. What do you think about his performance to start the season?
He's a superstar, Jacoby, and he's already proven so this very young in his career. The same way when you look around the league and you see franchise-changing players like a Luka Doncic or a John Moran or a Zion Williamson, so many great young talented players, Trae Young. I could go on and on and on about the young players that have distinguished themselves so very young in their career. He's not only done that for the regular season as the Jazz had the #1 seed and broke the record for threes made per average per game, but also he's done it in the playoffs. He's had a 57-point game last year in the bubble. It was really his battle against Jamal Murray was epic. He was 15th this year in the MVP voting. Usually somebody that's on the #1 seeded team in the best conference, and currently that's the Western Conference, they get more love than that. But he turns his game up on this stage, and he does it in all facets. In particular without Mike Conley. When he has that ball in his hands, he's more electric. I know you can't just take the ball away from Conley because he's a seasoned vet. He flirted with a triple-double. He also needs the ball. But when Donovan has it, and he can play make for himself and for others, and he can pick and choose his spot, and his three ball is going, he's shown to be virtually unstoppable. He was the reason, literally, they won Game 1. A superstar player playing the way he played against another 40-point performance versus the vaunted Clippers defense on the perimeter?
Yeah. We saw Luka do it last round, and it was Mitchell last night. But one person who needs to be pointed out, the gentleman by the name of Paul George, he was hearing overrated chants. He started the game like 2 for 12. He was part of the Clippers comeback. We have to give him credit for that. But Paul George, from once in a while in the playoffs, just has tough games. Why do you think that is?
There are two audiences as public figures that we entertain, as athletes, as media personalities. There's the linear audience, and then there's the social media audience. Like, every time somebody's trying to create something, they're trying to think of how to satisfy both of those audiences. And there are people that are liked by the linear audience, but are disliked by the social media audience. And there are people that are disliked by both, and or vice versa. Soon as Paul George starts struggling in a game, once he told the world that his nickname was Playoff P, now all of a sudden when he struggles, Playoff P is trending for all of the wrong reasons. Pandemic P is trending for all of the wrong reasons. When you're an all-NBA performer and you have multiple games where you shot under 25%, the audience is going to pay attention to that. And so you're right to point out the fact that Paul George can't be pedestrian if the Clippers are even going to make this a long series.
You mentioned earlier about the Jazz being the #1 seed, about how they broke the record for 3 points per game. But one thing that they don't get enough credit for is their defense. They were the #1 seed for a reason. One of those reasons was that defense. And that is also one of the reasons that Paul George struggled. And when people talk about the Jazz defense, they talk about one man, Rudy Gobert. But as you saw last night, it was a full team effort to limit Kawhi Leonard. Remember what Kawhi Leonard did games 5, 6, and 7 against the Mavs to limit Paul George, to make things difficult for them. I love the Jazz defensive effort that they had last night, and I think that is what will propel them to make it difficult for the Clippers. But Jalen, holistically about this series, I don't know who's going to win. I think we're going to get 6 or 7 out of this one, don't you?
I believe the Jazz will win. I anticipate a long series because they have so many guys like a Jordan Clarkson, who's going to be Sixth Man of the Year, who are fearless. Like the Utah Jazz missed 20 straight shots in the first half. Found a way with that defense that you just highlighted to shoot themselves back into the game. And that level of cohesion of a core group of players playing together with Ingles and Bogdanovich and these guys that have been in the trenches together the last handful of years, and Favors and Gobert, you're able, and the same head coach who's done a terrific job of nurturing his team in Quinn Snyder, you now can draw on your principles, and that's what I saw versus a Clippers team that's still searching for an identity. It's a new series. Now, you're giving more minutes to Patrick Beverley. You're giving more minutes to Boogie, because what happens is you got to now walk into the locker room and tell those vets, hey, y'all got to stay ready. I know I didn't use y'all in the first series, but I'm going to need y'all going forward. So now you're watching the game and they playing 12 players to start the game. You're like, well, what happened? Well, they just had a 7-game series and they got to keep those guys engaged. So those things worked in the Utah Jazz favor also.
We now turn our attention to the Eastern Conference, where we have the Hawks taking on the Sixers in Game 2. The Hawks got Game 1 in Philadelphia. They did not get Game 2 because of that man right there, a 40-point performance from Joel Embiid.
So if you look at the stat sheet in particular points, you'll see that Joel Embiid had 39 in Game 1. He had 40 in Game 2. Let me tell you, with this eye test that's been doing this for a living and playing for a long time, he was a vastly better and improved player in Game 2.
Ooh, interesting. How?
One play in particular embodies that. When he got it on the left wing and he bullied Clint Capella and he went and dunked it. See, what happened with Joel is he has a magnetic personality. So when he first got into the league, I'm going to dominate on the floor, but I'm going to dominate with the laughs. I'm going to dominate on social media. I'm going to dominate with the endorsements. And then he realized that, wait a minute, Kawhi shot us down and there's footage of me crying. Wait a minute, the Boston Celtics swept us in the playoffs. Sam Hinkie coined the process. He got fired. Brett Brown was my first coach. He got fired. So now you bring in Morey. You bring in Doc. The game broke his heart. And now he ain't focused on being Troel. He focused on being the best player in the game. And that's why he was number 2 in the MVP race. And that's why he's the most physically dominant, skilled big we have in the game. And the sole reason why they won Game 2, his effort, other than the fact that you put Ben Simmons on Trae Young along with Thibault, you lose that assignment, Danny Green, and you get shot making from Milton. And it seems like they never lose when Curry scores at least 15. And so being able to play multiple ways and having that balance is why they took Game 2.
Yeah, it was curious how much they were using Danny Green against Trae Young in Game 1. And it was so curious that Doc Rivers completely scrapped that and went with Simmons and Matisse Thybulle, who both have long length and quick hands and are great defenders. But I want to point something out about Joel Embiid just to demonstrate how difficult it is to stop him, because he is so versatile when he gets the ball. You know that snake thing they have on the floor in Philadelphia? This is like 3 straight possessions.
There it is.
All right, I'll catch it there and just push you out the way. Same spot. This time, I'm going to go right and take a little, turnaround jump shot. And then watch this one. Step back to the baseline. You can't stop him from the snake. And a couple times they try to throw double teams at him, and he makes the right read every time. It's a great performance from Joel Embiid. And remember, we were worried about his health? He looked pretty healthy last night. Jalen, we're now going to turn our attention to the NFL. It is officially the start of the season, and the Super Bowl champions have the GOAT, Tom Brady, going full speed on the first day of minicamp. Jalen, What does this say for the Buccaneers, and what do you think of their chances this season to defend the championship?
I miss my days being a member of the St. Cecilia Beacons, and I was a defensive end, and I thought I was Reggie White or Ed Too Tall Jones. I used to be crushing kids, and I showed up at the Silver Dome at the championship game with dirty pants, and our coach, the legend, Sam Washington, never forgave me for that. But in all honesty, Tom Brady, at 43 years of age, is still the guy that now NFL teams have to figure a way to combat his greatness after 7 championships. It's phenomenal. He walks into the office and says, sign AB. I know he's dealing with some off-field issues. Sign Gronk. I know that he's wrestling and doing other stuff. Get me some help in the backfield. Get me a pass catcher that can come out of the backfield. Oh, they still have Evans and Godwin. Like, they have weapons everywhere of mass destruction football-wise. And Tom Brady under center, they're going to be better this year, in particular in the regular season, than they were last year.
Jalen, there's something really important on that screen right now, and it's at the bottom. They are the only Super Bowl champion since the salary cap era in 1994 that are returning all 22 starters on offense and defense. It has never happened before. And if you remember last season, think back. Remember the Saints game when they lost 38-3? Do you remember when they lost to the Bears and Tom Brady thought there was an extra down? They had a bad loss to the Rams. They lost to the Chiefs. They didn't start great, but when you return 22 players and when you have Tom Brady going full speed the first day of minicamp, I really like their chances to repeat as Super Bowl champions, something that is so difficult to do in sports.
And also, while they have the weaponry to outscore anyone, you add Giovanni Bernard, as I mentioned, we need somebody to catch it out of the backfield. But the actual reason why they won the Super Bowl was the Chiefs didn't score a touchdown. So let's make sure you pay homage to that defense as well when you say everybody returning, because everybody on that side of the ball is returning as well.
That's a great point. Jalen Rose, the MVP of the NBA, the stretch mark 5, Nikola Jokic, has his work cut out for him and the Nut. Coming to you live above the Heineken River Deck here in Pier 17. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen Rose, we all knew it was going to happen, but it officially happened. Nikola Jokic is the MVP of the NBA. While not a surprise, it does not mean he will not be celebrated by Jalen Anthony Rose.
No doubt about it. Oh, you see him hitting with the Smitty on the post. How about the skill that this man has? So you saw him do an off-the-dribble Smitty on the post. You see him shooting a 3. You see him be the roller in the pick-and-roll action and finish at the hoop. You see him shooting the ball off his right leg as a right-handed player. He's the only guy in the league as a center that they literally initiate the offense through. Oh, and by the way, if you look at the league rankings, he's top whatever in every category because he's been that dominant. The person who was second, Joel Embiid, he also played almost about 20 games more than he did. So he was consistent from beginning to end. He helped lead the Nuggets whether Murray was in or out. Well deserving of the award for our guy, the Joker. Our guy, the Joker.
And Jalen, I see something happening in the NBA. The last center to win MVP was Shaquille O'Neal around the turn of the century. You mentioned it. Number 1 in voting was Jokic. Number 2 was Joel Embiid. And think about, look at Shaq. He was so dominant. Perhaps we will have a resurgence of big men in the NBA after we listen to the words small ball for so long. But we will need a resurgence from Nikola Jokic between Game 1 and Game 2 in the key series between the Nuggets and the Suns, because in Game 1, Nikola Jokic just wasn't aggressive enough. He needs to put some fouls on Ayton. He needs to find his shot. He needs to be aggressive. Jalen, what does he need to do?
Go towards the basket and look to score. He had 3 assists because they're able to stay at home. Without Murray and without Barton, Morris didn't have the kind of game that he had in the previous series where he put up 20 in back-to-back games. But the main thing that also has to happen besides the Joker being aggressive and scoring and trying to get Ayton into foul trouble so they can now go to Saric, so they can now go to Frank Kaminsky, I think he'll solve Crowder guarding him because he's just too skilled and too big for Crowder to guard him. But the thing that's got to happen for the Nuggets is Michael Porter Jr., slow down. Slow down, like the brand Nubians. Look at these shots. It's not that he can't make those shots. It's just that he's playing a hair faster than he normally does. So when you watch great players and we say he doesn't allow himself to get sped up, this is the opposite of that. He allowed that to happen to himself in the first game. I think if he slows down, continues to cut and move without the ball, get a couple of layups, get a couple of dunks, don't necessarily rely on the three-point shot to get his offense going, I think he'll perform much better in game 2.
Yep, and there's also a couple things for the Suns that we need to point out. Number one that you want to celebrate is the guard play, what's happening in the backcourt in Phoenix.
The NCAA tournament is it's the NBA playoffs, that's right. And Monty Williams played in the league. Shout out to my little brother, Willie Green, on the staff. They're doing a terrific job of developing talent. Here's what they've done. You add Chris Paul, the point guard, who's going to have high assists, low turnovers, and great decision-making, to go with Devin Booker, who's been a primary ball handler his entire career, and early in his career scored 70 points against the Boston Celtics. Jay Crowder, now I think about it, was on that team. Pretty sure they joke about that. And now all of a sudden you develop Cam into an asset. And so now he's playing quality minutes off the bench and knocking down his lefty three. And then Mikal Bridges. He's going to play defense, but now he's scoring the ball. He played well in game 1. So having those 4 players are really going to be troublesome for the Nuggets. But I have a question for you. Where your guy Campazzo at? Where he at?
Dame ended Campazzo last series. Dame absolutely ended Campazzo last series. He is no longer there.
No, Chris Paul ended him in game 1.
Well, in New Orleans, they're asking where is Drew Brees because he is no longer with the team. And Sean Payton said that the offense will be built a little bit around the quarterback choice. And obviously that choice is between Jameis Winston and that man right there, Taysom Hill. Jalen, do you think there's a real competition between these two for the starting quarterback job in New Orleans?
I don't think it should be. A couple of years ago, when Drew Brees got injured for a couple of games, they didn't put in Taysom Hill. They put in Teddy Bridgewater. He played well and parlayed that into a contract with Carolina. Now he's not with them anymore. You know what Jameis was doing? Yeah, he was throwing 30 interceptions. But he's also getting big yards and throwing 30 touchdowns. And when I look at the competition, it doesn't look like one. And we had Cam Jordan on the show, and we asked him about the quarterback position. He mentioned Jameis. He did not mention Taysom. And last but not least, and this is where the game gets tricky, salary. Jameis Winston accomplished everything that he accomplished, and he makes basically a minimum salary. Taysom Hill accomplished as a Swiss Army knife what he's accomplished, and he makes a top-tier salary. What a time to be alive.
If you're Jameis Winston, you have to think, I'm a quarterback. I've been a quarterback my entire life. You're not going to replace me with someone that's not a quarterback, someone who covers punts, someone that's a tight end, someone who's sort of like a wildcat offensive guy. You know what? That's like someone coming to me and saying they're replacing me on this show with a parrot. They'll be like, listen, all you have to do is speak. You just have to ask the questions. So we're going to replace you with the parrot on Jalen Jacoby. That's your new co-host right there. That's how Jameis Winston feels right now. Jalen, we have sound from a pitcher in Major League Baseball that every single person can relate to. We'll play it for you right after this. You're watching Jalen and Jacoby. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen, Garrett Cole was asked about using spider tack on his hands, and this was his response.
And have you ever used spider tack while pitching?
I don't know. I don't know if I don't quite know how to answer that, to be honest.
I don't know. I don't know quite how to answer.
I don't know exactly. I don't have the perfect answer. Give me is the Zoom? I think the Zoom. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I'm the bad connection.
Pretty sure
bad
the
connection. I'll call back. I'll call back.
In Major League Baseball.
We will be back
no-hitters.
tomorrow on ESPN at 2 p.m.
2 o'clock. Tell a friend. Tell a friend.